Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Organization Effectiveness. Are you focusing on the right metrics for successful transformations? So we know sometimes significant change is needed to seize opportunities, to course correct, or to meet an objective that's come into the business. Most individuals just would choose not to embark on a large-scale transformation if that were an option. However, reality is reality, right? And many organizations can't avoid the need for large-scale change. Most, though, do not build the capability to avoid it over time once an event is complete. And that's a little bit what we want to talk about today, how to manage that cycle of embarking on a transformative change, but taking an optimistic shift to think about how do we set up for mitigating that requirement in the future, ongoing capability, and also what kind of data and technology are needed to underpin it. Our goal is to be practical as well as ambitious. So I'm delighted to be joined by a couple of esteemed guests today for the conversation. My name is Jessica Modrell. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Orgvue. I'm joined today by Betsy Summers, Principal Analyst in the Future of Work at Forrester, and Mithuna Bhatt, the Principal Director at Accenture Strategy. So I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll get going. Mithuna, I said your name last. We'll start with you.
Perfect. So Mithuna here, Principal Director at Accenture Strategy, focused on operating model and org design work, and specifically in the upfront value targeting and on the back end, continuous optimization pieces. So I lead how we transform our work internally at Accenture with an operating model using data and AI, and how we also deliver that for our clients. And in that spirit, I lead our Intelligent Org Accelerator capability and our partnership with Orgvue. So happy to be here today with friends. Betsy?
Fantastic.
Yes, I'm also happy to be here. I am looking forward so much to this conversation. I'm a principal analyst at Forrester. I serve on the Future of Work team, so I get to work with all of the clients across Forrester, navigate changes to their workplace, their workforce, changes in employee experience expectations from their workforce. And especially in this kind of rate of increasing change, a lot of those conversations are starting with the premise of a transformation. Do we actually need to do a full-scale reorg or transformation in order to get these particular outcomes that we are expecting or that we want? Especially as AI is coming in and promising a lot of disruption, it's also coming in and promising a lot of transformation uplift. And leaders, I think, want to take advantage of that, but are not really sure how to, especially if they haven't built a capability internally. So Forrester doesn't do any of the transformation work, but we help leaders navigate it as they are going through it, or as they are trying to build up an internal capability of measuring and monitoring the various KPIs and organizational health metrics that they want to keep track of over time as they build their own capability internally to try to navigate today and tomorrow's change. So I'm really excited to have this multifaceted conversation about all of the ways that leaders can successfully navigate all of this.
Fantastic. Yep, I think some really brilliant points of view to be brought to the fore today. So thanks again to both of you. So let's get going. So setting up for a transformation, we talked about the sometimes unavoidable event that transpires over the course of doing business. So I think the first sort of question set I'm interested in is really how do we set the measures that are fundamental for that success, to making sure that this transformation goes successfully really from the offset, and what kind of baseline data and KPIs should be prioritized to understand reality accurately, so we're setting ourselves off on the right foot. Mithuna, let's start with you and give you an opportunity to address those two questions.
Yeah, so I think this is kind of an area that I enjoy spending time in, but it's also an area where my clients specifically sometimes struggle, right? Because I think we talked about in the past the volumes of data that exist. Like, where do I begin to understand, what is the work that's happening in an organization and how I can transform from there? So where we always like to start with is, what is the strategy, the case for change? Like, what is the trigger of why we're embarking on this transformation, right? And some of our Accenture research recently has shown that 95% of organizations have been through some sort of transformation in the last 2 years. So we know it's somewhat inevitable to some degree, right? Whether it's reasons around technology or talent or other sort of macroeconomic factors that are driving the change. So I think where we like to start is first really understanding what is the work that people are working on. And then when we think about the metrics, we want to look at size and cost. We want to look at structure. We want to look at talent, process metrics. So really being holistic. We usually look at things like our STAR model framework as a guiding factor of making sure we're looking across multiple dimensions of an organization to understand org health. But then also always tying back to what is the strategy? What are the macro factors, the business indicators that matter? Because we don't want to get into the weeds, right? And so I think that's part of the balance of, metrics, data, the upfront kind of setting the ground for transformation, or even on the back end, being able to think of it as like an art, not a science. I think when we talk about numbers and data, people think it's always very factual and scientific and methodical, which to some degree it is, but there's a lot of art in understanding the health of an organization, bringing together multiple pieces of data. But I think what I would, really urge our clients to do is, be holistic, be kind of focused both on forward-looking metrics and predictive kind of metrics, so that we're not anchored only to things that are retrospective. Like traditional benchmarks tend to be retrospective, so really balancing that. And then, like I said in the end, just being kind of open-minded in how we go about that, with the idea of all of this kind of really being an art, right? So balancing external sort of data-driven techniques with qualitative insights, interviews to add that texture, the layer to any sort of diagnostic that we're undertaking at the start of a transformation.